Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Animaction, and welcome to my top 20 Christmas movies, specials, and episodes. Well, not my top 20, but a top 20. It's my top 5, as well as the top 5s of 3 of my Discord mods, 10, Slinky, and mine. I had each of them chip in so that we could get more of a rounded perspective, since I'm not really the kind of guy that has any real emotional attachment to Christmas specials from back in the day. I watched plenty of them, but I could take them or leave them, honestly. There are a couple that I like and a couple that I go back to, and that's about it. Mostly I prefer Christmas episodes of TV shows that I appreciate or enjoy. That being the case, I thought I would expand the horizons of this list and get them to contribute to it. So we're going to start at number 5 and go through each of the 4 of us. I encourage you after this video or whenever to chip in and write your favorite 5 down in the comments below. Maybe I can do a comprehensive list at the end, not like a narrated one, but just a quick video that summarizes everybody's. We'll rank them based on how many times they appear. Either way, that's enough of that for now, so let's jump right into the video. Well, starting at 5 and working our way up, let's take a look at 10's lowest pick. He went with Jack Frost, which is a Rankin Bass stop-motion special from December 13th, 1979. The story follows the winter spirit Jack as he rescues a girl, falls in love, and then makes a wish to turn into a human and be with her. Father Winter agrees to turn him into a human, but on the condition that by the first day of spring he has to collect a house, a horse, and a bag of gold. So Jack sets about on a quest to do these things in order to become human permanently and spend a human existence with the woman he loves. He, of course, ends up fighting a bad guy and, in the end, claims the bad guy's castle, the mechanical horse, and all the bad guy's gold, only to find out that the girl ended up falling in love with somebody else and is getting married to him. So Jack gives up his humanity and goes back to being a winter spirit. So much for a holiday happy ending. Mine's pick goes the live-action route with Ernest Saves Christmas from 1988. This is a movie about Jim Varney's Ernest P. Worrell, who is working as a cab driver in Orlando, Florida, when he meets Santa Claus. Santa's there to visit the next person in line to wear the Santa mantle, and Ernest drives him to the guy's office. Of course, Santa doesn't have any real money, so Ernest says the ride's free, which gets him fired. And when Santa goes to talk to his replacement, he finds the guy is a local celebrity, and the guy's manager has him arrested. Of course, Ernest and a sidekick that he and Santa picked up in the cab, along with a couple of elves, go to rescue Santa from the police station. The rest of the elves deliver the sleigh and the reindeer to the Orlando airport, and Ernest meets them there to fly the sleigh to meet Santa and allow him to deliver gifts, thereby saving the day. And Ernest gets to spend the night flying the sleigh. I honestly like all of the Ernest movies, so this one's a good pick. For another good pick, Slinky went with the He-Man and She-Ra Christmas special. This one came from Filmation, just like the He-Man and She-Ra cartoons, and was aired on 12/25/85. It's about Orko messing up a spell that accidentally transports him to Earth, where he meets 2 children lost in the woods, and finds out the meaning of Christmas from them. The other masters manage to teleport Orko back to Eternia, but he brings the kids with him. Since the teleport beam takes a couple of days to recharge, the kids are stuck there in Eternia in the castle. They're worried about missing Christmas, and because she's originally from Earth, Queen Marlena understands why they're so upset. So she decides they're going to throw a combined Adam Aurora birthday party Christmas party. Unfortunately, Horde Prime thinks that the Christmas spirit is the threat to his power, so he sends Skeletor and Hordak to kidnap the kids, which they do. Shortly after that, though, they get shot down and the Monstroids kidnap the kids instead. Fortunately, the Manchines are around and they show up to save the kids, or at least to keep them safe long enough for He-Man and She-Ra to come and save the day. They return back to the castle. Man-at-Arms gives them a flying belt so they can go home and end up in the hospital. Skeletor has a Grinch moment where his heart grows 3 sizes and he even lets the kids go and protects them from a monster at one point, and everybody's happy. Christmas has come to Eternia, and we're left kind of with the idea that they already knew about it, but whatever. And then, finally, for my pick, I'm sure this won't surprise anyone, but it's not actually Christmas special per se, but it's an episode of G.I. Joe. Specifically, Cobra Claws are coming to town. In this episode, Destro develops a shrink ray, shrinks down a bunch of the Cobra forces, smuggles them into Joe vehicles inside wrapped presents, they burst out, Firefly comes in, turns them to their normal size, and they overrun G.I. Joe headquarters. Their plan is to use Joe vehicles to attack the nearby Keystone City and make the Joes look like villains. The Joes manage to escape their bonds because Cobra just left them tied up and unsupervised, and they end up taking Cobra's vehicles to go fight the Cobras who are in the Joe vehicles. The episode ends with Polly getting shot by the shrink ray and turned giant, and then winning the aerial battle all by himself. Everybody's happy, orphans get their presents, the Joes look like heroes, the end. So a decent mix to start off the list. Let's go ahead and keep moving forward. So let's start the number 4 slot with mine's 4th choice, The Little Drummer Boy. This was another Rankin Bass stop-motion special released on December 19th, 1968. It's a story about a boy whose parents are killed, and then he's kidnapped and forced into servitude as a drummer in a traveling caravan show, and swears off humanity, saying he hates everybody, and eventually runs into the 3 wise men. He runs away from the caravan, follows the wise men. He and his animal companions go to Bethlehem. His lamb gets hit by a car, or, chariot, and he takes the lamb to Jesus to be healed. He really doesn't have any way to thank Jesus or pay him, so he does the only thing he knows how to do and plays a rockin' Buddy Rich drum solo. I know that's kind of a short explanation, but it's a show about a kid that plays a drum. What do you want? Moving on, Slinky picked a claymation Christmas celebration for his number 4 choice. The special aired on December 21st, 1987, from animator Will Vinton. It was a claymation, which you could probably have guessed based on the title, musical variety show, with each vignette being centered around a specific Christmas song. The show was hosted by a T-Rex named, Rex, and a Triceratops, or something, I'm not a paleontologist, named Herb. Herberts.
Listen, Alice. Herbert.
And that's about it. Rex and Herb would do skits between the songs, and that was pretty much the whole special. For my 4th pick, I went with The Muppet Christmas Carol. I love the Muppets, and I enjoy all of the different versions of the Christmas Carol out there. It's a story that I actually do have a fondness for, so putting the two together is kind of a great idea for Christmas, in my opinion. I don't actually, go back and watch Christmas specials every year or revisit my childhood, as it were, but I do enjoy this one, and I have watched it a few times. I don't know what else there is to say about it. Everybody knows what the Christmas Carol story is, and everybody knows who the Muppets are, so put those two things together, and that's what you've got. And lastly, for 10's number 4 pick, he's got Santa Claus is Coming to Town, another Rankin Bass stop-motion special that aired on December 13th, 1970. This one is a Santa Claus origin story. It starts with a young kid named Klaus being adopted and raised by elves and taught to make toys. Klaus lives near a town run by the evil Burgermeister Meisterburger, who has declared toys to be off-limits. This was a kind of a petty response to having stubbed his toe on a toy train at one point. Klaus delivers some toys to the town and gets thrown in jail for breaking the law. He's broken out eventually, goes back, makes some more toys, tries to deliver them again, and it's kind of a back and forth between him and Burgermeister about whether or not he'll be able to get the toys into the town. Burgermeister keeps trying different things, like ordering doors locked, and Klaus just goes in and goes down chimneys. In the end, Klaus decides to put on a disguise, change his name to Santa Claus, and essentially go ahead and dethrone Burgermeister from his role as mayor of the town. All of these Rankin Bass specials are a lot of fun, but I watch them a couple times, and I'm pretty much good forever. I know, I'm probably kind of a Scrooge. Maybe that's why I relate to the Christmas Carol so well. But moving on. Let's start with Slinky as we move into number 3. He's gone with perhaps the most classic of classics with Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, yet another Rankin Bass stop-motion special that originally aired on December 6, 1964. I don't really even think I have to summarize this one. Everybody probably knows about Rudolph. If you haven't seen the special, though, instead of just being a 2-minute song about a reindeer with a glowing nose, it tells his origin story of a dejected child reindeer who's bullied by his peers and runs away. As he wanders the forest alone, he runs into another dejected soul in the form of Hermie the elf, who was also mocked by his peers because he didn't want to be a toy maker, but instead wanted to be a dentist. He also runs into the adventurer Yukon Cornelius, and together they form a ragtag crew who set off to do something. I don't remember what their goal was, or if they even had a goal. but eventually they run into the abominable snow monster, run away from him, and find themselves on the island of Misfit Toys, where they meet several Misfit Toys and King Moonracer, a kind of angry, evil-looking flying lion thing that it turns out is a nice guy who adopts toys to save them from being thrown away. The trio agree to take the toys and return them to Santa to see if he can find loving homes for them. Anyway, they set off back to the North Pole. In the intervening time, Rudolph became like a teenager or something, I guess, or maybe fully grown. Anyway, he gets home to find that his parents have been kidnapped by the abominable snow beast. The three of them go off to save his parents. They fight the snow beast. Hermes mutilates the monster by pulling all of his teeth, and he and Yukon Cornelius go tumbling off a cliff. Rudolph, Hermie, and the parents return to the North Pole, and eventually Yukon Cornelius and the Snow Beast show up, with the Snow Beast having been tamed by the adventurer. Everybody's happy, Rudolph gets to lead the sleigh, and Christmas is saved. For my number 3 choice, I went with another episode of a TV show. This time, the premiere episode of The Simpsons, which came out on December 17th, 1989, called Simpsons Roasting on an Open Fire. This is an all-time classic, which involves the family going to the mall for Christmas shopping. While there, Bart decides his gift to his mom is going to be a tattoo, which Marge, of course, freaks out about. So instead of presents, she spends all of the family's Christmas money to get the tattoo removed. She thinks this is probably okay because they're counting on Homer's Christmas bonus, but of course Mr. Burns finds a way to weasel out of giving one to any of his employees. In order to make the money back, without telling his family that he's not getting a bonus, Homer goes and takes a job as a mall Santa. Of course, mall Santa pay is probably not that great, so he doesn't really make enough money to make a difference for their Christmas, and instead decides to take it to the dog track and try to win more on the races. He sees what he thinks is some kind of sign when he notices a dog named Santa's Little Helper in one of the races, so he bets everything on that. Of course, Santa's Little Helper is not a great race dog and loses pretty badly. He and Bart end the episode by seeing the poor dog getting abused by its owner as they leave through the parking lot and end up adopting Santa's Little Helper and making it the family pet, which turns out to be the perfect present for all the Simpsons. For 10's number 3, we're going with another Rankin Bass special, but this time not stop motion. It's the traditionally animated 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, which aired on December 8th, 1974. This one's about a know-it-all bratty mouse who writes an open letter to the local newspaper denouncing Santa Claus and talking about how he doesn't really exist. Well, Santa sees the letter and he doesn't really take it all that great, so he decides he's not going to visit that town at all, sends all the letters back to the townspeople unopened, and goes about his merry business. This, of course, turns the townsfolk against the mouse, including his own family, and everybody's kind of fed up with him. But eventually, he catches some sort of Christmas spirit and realizes Santa must be real, and makes it his mission to attract Santa to town to deliver the presents that he screwed everybody out of. They make like this is a happy ending, but really the little mouse kid's kind of a jerk, and, well, he would have deserved his comeuppance. But eventually Santa does come to town, and you'll probably get sick of hearing this, but Christmas is saved. Finally, for mine's number 3, we have a live-action movie from 2005 called Joyeux Noël. This is a French-German-British co-production that chronicles the tales of a real-life Christmas event from World War I. In the movie, as in the real-world event, the soldiers on both sides of the no-man's-land battlefield call an unofficial truce on Christmas Day. This truce is independent from any of their leadership and done purely on their own after they hear each other singing Christmas tunes in their trenches. They spend the day celebrating the holiday together, hanging out, playing games, etc., and then at the end go back to their own side and pick the war right back up where they left off. The movie deals with some other drama going on in the background, but the main focus, as it probably should be, is on the unofficial truce. It's really an interesting piece of history, and you should check out the movie if it sounds cool to you. Well, I'll kick off our number 2 entries with an episode of one of my absolute favorite 90s TV shows, Space, Above and Beyond. Specifically, the 11th episode that aired on December 17th, 1995, called River of Stars. If you're not familiar with it, the show is about a group of space marines who are pilots and special forces operatives who are fighting in a war between humanity and a group of aliens. This episode sees them trapped in space on a disabled ship with no way to get back and no way to be found. The 5 of them are drifting aimlessly through space, not sure what to do, and the show follows them as they sit around inside the ship discussing how it's the holiday and exchanging gifts and sharing stories with each other. Eventually, they notice a comet approaching the ship and come up with a crazy plan to do a short burst of the last little bit of fuel they have to align themselves with the comet and piggyback on it. It's a very risky plan and requires specific, very particular calculations. They have to engage the engine for a very, very particular amount of time. Well, eventually they go ahead and they get everything set up and they go to enact the plan and the engine burns longer than it's supposed to. Well, Christmas miracle happens and they end up in the comet's tail anyway and riding along with it as it soars back in the direction they were trying to go. Eventually they get detected by their mothership, the Saratoga, and rescued and brought on board. And then there's some discussion about how that comet might have been the same star that the wise men followed. It's kind of a cool episode and shows Marines in their downtime and how they deal with a difficult situation. And the show's great, so that ranks it up here for me. 10's number 2 choice is a Christmas special from the Peanuts, and not the one you're probably thinking of. Instead, this one is It's Christmas Time Again, Charlie Brown, which aired on November 27th, 1992. It was the 36th primetime Peanuts special, and featured the gang as they went about their normal lives during the holiday season. It featured things like Charlie Brown trying to explain to Sally about the commercialization of Christmas and how it's not really about the presents, various other characters being in various types of plays, experiencing different holiday-themed revelations and antics, and just generally Christmassy stuff. It was, Peanuts during Christmas. Don't know what else to say about it. Obviously, the characters are more famous for their other special, but we'll get to that later. Mine's number 2 is another live-action movie, this time with 1985's Santa Claus, the movie, starring Dudley Moore. In this one, it also tells the origin story of Santa Claus, but it begins with him being a toy maker and he and his wife freeze to death out in the forest. They get transported to the North Pole where they're resurrected and then told that he's the prophesized one to become Santa Claus. So he goes ahead and starts doing that several hundred years ago, and by the time it reaches the 80s, he's pretty burned out. He ends up recruiting an assistant who is an elf with all these wonderful ideas about modernization and who has a knack for technology. And the elf starts building things to make production of toys easier and faster, but he makes subpar toys that fall apart. In embarrassment, he resigns from the elves and wanders away, only to find himself vying for a job with a different toy maker who is somewhat unscrupulous. Anyway, the elf, named Patch, infuses some lollipops with the same magic that makes the reindeer fly and creates flying lollipops that give humans the same ability. The toy maker, who is of course a money-grubbing sleazebag, decides that he wants to ramp this up a little bit and make some even more powerful candy canes out of this stuff that he plans to use to usher in his Christmas 2 holiday in March. Turns out that the candy canes become explosive and are dangerous, but, bad guy's got a bad guy and he's going to release them anyway. He figures he'll release them, get a bunch of money, run off to Brazil, and leave Patch to take all the blame. Of course, he gets the money and starts to flee, but Santa, Patch, and a couple of sidekick kids, one of whom is actually the toy maker's niece, chase him down in the sleigh. They end up catching all the bad guys, who all get arrested, except for the main baddie, who decides he's going to OD on the fairy dust things and crams a bunch of the candy canes down his throat before jumping out a window. Unfortunately, it's a little too powerful, and he ends up floating off to die in space. So, happy ending, I guess? But lastly, for our number 2s, Slinky went with A Charlie Brown Christmas, which is that Peanuts special that you were thinking of before. And, I'm not going to describe it here. We'll see it again momentarily, actually. And finally, we get to our number 1s, where we have come full circle and go right back to 10 for his pick. Perhaps unsurprisingly, after the last one, it's A Charlie Brown Christmas, which originally aired on December 9th, 1965, and was actually the first of all of the Peanuts specials to air in primetime. So, of all the things we've talked about on this list, there's a chance that this one might be the most prolific. We always hear about the Rankin Bass shows when it comes to Christmas time, but this particular Christmas special is probably, little more well-known than them all. I can go out right now to any store and buy a tabletop Christmas tree from this show. And that's what everybody remembers most about. Charlie Brown picking out this pathetic little limp tree and everybody hating him for it until they realize they can use the Christmas spirit to make it a beautiful decorative centerpiece for their Christmas play. And then Linus monologues about the meaning of Christmas, and it gets a little heavy-handed, and honestly, that's the point where it kind of loses my attention. Not really my pick, but definitely 10's, and, well, Slinky's number 2, so there you go. A Peanuts top-heavy list for 10. Let's move on and take a look at what mine went with. For this pick, we have another live-action movie, this time from Mexico. It's Santa Claus from 1959, or, if you prefer, Santa Claus versus the Devil. This is a live-action movie about Santa going to his child labor-run space castle to get ready for Christmas, but at the same time, Lucifer releases the demon Pitch from hell in order to turn the children of the world against him. Pitch gets up to various antics, recruiting a trio of ne'er-do-wells and just generally causing mayhem. Fortunately, Santa's assistant Merlin the Wizard comes to give him some magical items and helps prep the robo-reindeer for his flight across the world. As he begins his journey, Pitch keeps trying to sabotage him every step of the way, and the trio keeps trying to steal all the presents. Various different antics ensue, like Santa being chased up a tree by a dog, and the trio trying to steal the sleigh, and a bunch of other things, and eventually ends with Pitch getting the upper hand and being about to ruin Christmas by kidnapping or killing or whatever to Santa before Merlin shows up and teleports Santa away and saves Christmas, yada yada yada. It's a weird movie, like really weird. And if you try searching it here on YouTube, you'll find a couple of cool reviews out there for it. If you don't want to watch the movie itself, I recommend checking those out. For Slinky's number 1 pick, we go with another Rankin Bass stop-motion special. This time, The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus, from December 17th, 1985. This special focuses around a character called the Great Ack as he lobbies the Lords of the Immortals to give Santa Claus immortality. He tells of Santa's backstory, how he was a lost orphan child raised by animals and mythical creatures who taught him how to make toys and, I guess, magic. So he begins making toys, delivering them to children around his area, and runs afoul of a group called the Ogwas, who are little troll-like things that influence kids to do bad. They don't want the toys to be delivered, and they keep messing with Santa every step of the way. Of course, the Great Ack doesn't like this. He shows up and he tells them they better stop, and the Ogwas are like, yeah, we're not going to stop, and their king declares war on the Immortals. A war in which they're essentially wiped off the face of the planet. So, yay? Anyway, Santa continues to age, and eventually, as he approaches death, he tells his friends that they should decorate a tree in his honor every year to remember him by. But before he can kick off, the Immortals vote unanimously to give him immortality, and so Santa's here forever. And that may be one of the most unique takes on Santa Claus that I've seen so far. But to round out this list, we get to my number 1 pick, which, you may not believe at this point, is an actual Christmas special. My favorite Christmas media is Mickey's Christmas Carol. This is the one that I do have an affinity for from my childhood, some kind of a connection to. I loved this version. It was a great retelling of the Christmas Carol story and had some really cool visual elements to it. And, well, I don't know if I like this per se, but I can clearly remember it mostly because Pete, as the ghost of Christmas yet to come, was pretty traumatic, especially when he shows Scrooge his own grave and kicks him into it. I mean, that was a little dark for a children's show, especially considering I saw it when I was probably ridiculously young, seeing as it originally aired on December 16th, 1983. But in addition to Pete, one of my other favorite parts about it was Goofy as Jacob Marley. That was just an entertaining segment. So, there you go. There's my holiday spirit, picking Mickey's Christmas Carol as my number 1.
Ho, ho, ho!
And so that's it, or those are they, our top 5 lists for Christmas specials, movies, and episodes. It's amazing that we're all relatively close in age, but we only had one duplicate on the 4 lists. Maybe that's because of the varying tastes. 10 is really big into the classics. Mine likes weird stuff. I'm kind of Scrooge-ish, like I said, and Slinky, I kind of think he's more into the neo-classics, but maybe a little mix of the classics at the same time. Anyway, if this video sounded a little less smooth than my normal videos, it's because I did something different and I didn't actually use a script for this one, just a page of notes. Kind of trying that out to see how well I do just speaking off the cuff, or whatever I was speaking off of. But that's it for this one. I have one other video that I want to make, maybe even tonight. that's kind of a little something different, something I've never done before, and just a tribute video to something that was a very important part of my holidays growing up. So I hope you enjoyed this list, and I'd really like to see your own list down in the comments to compare. I think that would be a lot of fun. So I'm not going to close this video out with anything fancy or anything too special. I'm just going to go ahead and wish everybody a happy holiday and tell you to stay tuned and stay tuned, as in cartoons. Later.